So let's call to order our first electronic meeting of the Signal Mountain Town Council. This is Monday, March 30th, and we'll go ahead and try to do a pledge because we have a flag and see if that works. If you're listening to other people in headphones, it's going to be difficult, I can promise. Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. That wasn't bad. And we'll pause for a moment of silence now. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining from your offices and abodes. Let's go ahead and have the roll call, and then we'll talk about how this is going to work. Carol?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak?
Here.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham?
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk?
Here.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch?
Here.
Mayor Dan Landrum?
Here. Wait. Did you say Vice Mayor Amy Speak?
Yes.
Oh.
And I'm here.
Oh, I see it. All right. I just got the first warning that the internet connection may be unstable. So if anybody misses something, you probably do need to ask to have it repeated if something cuts out. But we've all got the best internet around, so it should work. So Harry, the statement of protocol for electronic meetings is that the etiquette for meetings and planning the meeting and virtual meetings document.
Yes.
Do you want to go over that, or you want me to go over that?
I don't have it in front of me. Do you have it?
I do, yeah.
If you would.
So this was direction from MTAS, I believe, right? Or is this TML?
I believe it was MTAS.
MTAS. So it says the most important factor in having a successful virtual meeting is to have a clear meeting agenda and make sure the people involved are ready to present. It's also helpful to post or share any meeting materials beforehand so participants are prepared. Make sure to test your selected platform before the meeting to make sure you're familiar with how the application functions and that it's working properly. We tested this a few days ago and it looks like it's working now. Etiquette for virtual meetings: introduce everyone at the beginning, which we did with roll call. Well, actually we didn't. We should introduce our attorney, Harry Cash. Raise your hand and say hi.
Hello.
And town manager, Boyd Veal.
Hey.
And our accounting manager, director of accounting is Carol White. Say hi.
Hello.
That's everyone, right? And Sam Guin is running around back and forth, making sure everything's working and that the live stream is working properly. Make sure you designate when questions will be accepted during or at the end of a presentation. And we can talk about that because the lag makes it difficult to communicate. Do not interrupt people while they're speaking. Mute your phone if you're not speaking, if you're using a phone. Ask people to silence any cell phones you might have in the room. I'm going to do that right now. Make sure to eliminate as much background noise as possible. And common courtesy is the key to a successful meeting. When we get done, the recommendation is that we make sure all deliverables and next steps are fully communicated, assign any open items or tasks to individuals or groups, declare when information is due, and provide information for the next meeting. So with that, this is still about meeting protocol. If you don't mind, let's add to the discussion items community participation in electronic meetings, because there's a good chance we're going to be doing this for a while. We're going to have to figure out how that takes place. And Sam and I came up with an idea where we might be able to take phone calls and even have the 3-minute normalcy that we're used to, just one at a time. So if everyone's comfortable with everything, any questions?
Dan, I think we, just for the sake of the record, one of the things that the comptroller's office recommends is that at the onset of a meeting that there is actually a statement as to why we are holding this meeting electronically and why it's necessary. I think obviously in this case, the desire to maintain distance and keep the health and welfare of the council members and staff safeguarded is the motivation. But I think for the record, in each meeting, they've just recommended that something along those lines be stated for posterity and the record for future reference.
So Carol, you got that?
I do.
Into the manager's report now, just to give us an update on how it's been. So Boyd, if you want to take over and just talk about current operations, how the distancing is working from home, just how's it all working out?
All right. Actually, pretty much as we laid out in terms of a plan moving forward in our last meeting, is how things have fallen into place. To the degree possible, we have folks working from home. We're staggering staff time, such as at town hall, so that different people are working on different days. We pull mail on certain days, get payments ready for processing. Somebody comes in the next day and handles that, and so on. The staff in other departments are distancing, working alone as much as possible. And the department heads have found some interesting ways to get things done in a different, with a different approach than normal. So they're ultimately, a lot of maintenance is being done. Public Works is working on stormwater projects where a single person can go out and observe those, and even had a slip lining project on a storm drain completed. We were able to get that awarded and out and done this past week. So really just put that on there to mainly let you guys know that the approach we told you we were going to take, we are taking, and it's working. During this last week and a half or so, while we've been working in that way, we've also looked at how we can improve operations and perhaps do a better job of service delivery while still maintaining the safeguards. So that kind of led into the next, the questions and challenges and decisions moving forward, and that's what we've been working on during this last week, especially. And the questions being, can we do things more effectively? Can we deliver some of the services that we haven't been able to? And how would we go about some of those things? One of the things that I know that's been a kind of a hot topic on Facebook and such is the transfer station. We've met with Loretta today and Leslie, and put together a plan for what we hope will be a way we can open the transfer station, but manage the number of people that are using it and keep from having an influx and overcrowding, which would be counterproductive to what we're trying to do. So the plan there, if you want me to go on into that, will be to utilize the same schedule that we use for trash pickup. So if your trash is picked up on Wednesday, then on Wednesday you can go to the transfer station. If your trash is picked up on Friday, on Fridays you can go to the transfer station. So this will limit the number of people that may be coming in any given day. It will be open from 11 to 3 for household trash, brush, and scrap metal only. No building materials, no bulky items, no things with refrigerant in them, nothing that we would need to charge for or anything like that. So everybody in the town will have 1 day a week that they can get to the transfer station and use it. Those that are non-residents that have non-resident cards, the short route for trash pickup is on Friday for the fewest people. So on Friday, the non-residents with cards will have access to it as well. So their day will be Friday with the regular trash pickup Friday route. We're going to start that on Wednesday, day after tomorrow. We'll be posting that in as much detail as possible and getting the word out on that, and we'll see how it goes.
And with as much clarification, you did not mention in there, it's one of the things that we talked about there. We aren't going to take construction building. So,
yes, I did. At least I thought I mentioned that. It would be household trash, brush, and scrap metal only, and that is why we have capacity. The brush pile is not far from being at capacity, but we'll push it back. We'll try to make as much of that available as possible. We're also going to start doing brush pickup in the next couple of days, just altering how we do that and keeping some separation with the employees. We think we'll be able to do that as well. So all that should be underway this week.
My connection froze a bit while you were speaking. Did you mention recycle?
No, not yet. We are working on options to provide access to recycle. We haven't gotten a response from West Rock yet as to whether or not they will be able to accommodate what we need.
Oh, at the transfer station, would it make sense to eliminate the need to sign in so a lot of folks aren't handling the same pen and constantly?
Yes. All they're going to do, they'll pull down to where the little check-in station is. There will be someone there, but residents will not have to get out of their car there. They'll just check with them from a distance, ask their address, and tell them when they can go on up on the hill. We're going to try to minimize the number of people that are up there at one time. So say that's four vehicles up there, and then when someone pulls out, someone else can pull up. So it'll be kind of a check station, but they won't have to sign in or anything, and they won't have to get out of their vehicle there. We'll just use that as a control point.
That's great.
Anyone else have any questions about the transfer station? That seems like a great plan, and thank you for coming up with that. Folks have needed it. It may not meet every need, but it will meet some needs, which is
right.
What we're all trying.
It'll help, and that's what we felt on the front end we needed to shut down, get that separation, get that time to come up with a workable plan, and that's what we've tried to do, and we'll continue to do that with recycle, and hopefully if citizens will cooperate and be a little understanding and patient, we can make this work well for everyone. And if not, we'll have to regroup and see if it's feasible to try to continue it.
We don't, if there's nothing else on that subject, while we're still kind of in the manager's report, let's talk about Rainbow Lake and the park and how that has worked out over the weekend. So I was by there. I think everybody drove by at some point because it seemed like there were more cars than exist in Signal Mountain up and down the road on Saturday, exaggerating only a little bit. And the decision was made to go ahead and close it and put a couple of officers out there, one above Signal Point and one in front of Rainbow Lake. So I have a couple of discussion items just for us to talk about that. And to clarify that the hope is, but I don't know that we have a surety, Boyd, that we can use COVID emergency funding to pay the overtime for the officers.
We don't know at this point, but I think it's reasonable to think that that is something that would qualify.
It seems like it would be easy to defend, in particular for the national park, because they closed it and we're trying to keep people out.
Right, and they have furloughed the vast majority of their employees, so there's no one from that organization to enforce it. So
Right.
It falls to us.
So I stopped, and I know you've stopped by as well, just to check on the officers there and see what they're hearing. And on Sunday, they talked to people from Nashville, Knoxville, Atlanta, a couple that had driven all the way from Atlanta just to hike those trails. There were county tags from just every county that you can imagine around Alabama and Georgia. And this thing only works if the reason it spreads more in cities is because you have so many people packed together. And what we were having was people from cities coming and packing together in our small town. And I think it was something that needed to be done. The people who are probably going to have the most ongoing problem with it are the locals who want to go hiking. But for now, it's closed. Any other thing to add to that, Boyd?
No, we will continue to monitor it to the degree possible with officers. I think it, regardless of whether we're reimbursed, I think it's once the decision is made and we saw the negative impact that it was having on the community, especially in that vicinity, I think it's just something we have to do.
I called Mayor Trahanas to let him know when this was happening to our parks, just to let him know that it's probably going to push people into Walden, and McCoy Farms could have an issue, and also the Falling Water area. And he said and it did. They were busier this weekend. I've had a couple of texts from him today. He said Josh is their ranger who takes care of that area over there, and he said natural areas. There's going to be a recommendation of closure of all unstaffed natural areas, and the governor. That might be what the governor is doing today. That might be the recommendation that's coming down, but we don't know yet. So,
well, I just read a minute ago on the link that Harry sent us that the governor has issued a 2-week statewide order closing non-essential businesses and telling Tennesseans to stay home.
So is it an official stay-at-home order? Can you tell?
I sent it to all of you all.
It takes effect tomorrow afternoon and lasts through April 14th.
Businesses or organizations that do not perform essential services shall not be open for access or use by the public or its members.
True.
So, the question is, what are essential services?
I would ask my attorney that.
I was trying to read it. All right, looks like it's attached. Essential services include healthcare and public health operations, human services operations, essential infrastructure operations, emergency government functions, first responders, emergency management personnel, emergency dispatchers, food and medicine stores, food and beverage production and agriculture, organizations that provide charitable and social services, religious and ceremonial functions, media, gas stations and businesses needed for transportation, financial institutions and insurance entities, hardware and supply stores, critical trades, mail, post, shipping, logistics, delivery and pickup services, educational institutions, laundry services, restaurants for off-premises consumption, supplies to work from home, supplies for essential businesses and operations, transportation, home-based care and services, residential facilities and shelters, professional services, manufacturing, distribution, and supply chain for critical products and industries, hotels and motels, funeral services, any business related to essential activity as defined in Executive Order Number 22, including any outdoor recreation area, park, site, or trail that provides opportunities for outdoor recreation while maintaining adherence to health guidelines. Any other business or organization that operates at all times with 10 or fewer persons accessing the premises of the business or organization at one time. The minimum, number 30 and last, the minimum necessary activities required to maintain any business or organization, including maintaining the value of a business or organization's inventory, preserving the condition of the business physical plant and equipment, livestock, or assets, ensuring the security of the business or organization, processing the business or organization's mail, payroll, and employee benefits, facilitating employees of the business being able to continue to work remotely, or conducting any functions related to these activities.
So it sounds like they only closed the local music store.
It's pretty broad what's still out there.
All right. Anybody hear anything you think that affects us? Anything we need to make a decision about?
And his stay-at-home order provides that because staying at home as much as possible for a temporary period of time will protect the health and safety of Tennesseans by limiting the spread of COVID-19 and preserving healthcare resources, all persons in Tennessee are urged to stay at home, except for when engaging in essential activity or essential services as defined in this order.
Can I jump in? I got a text from Jared saying that Green Gorge Trail was really busy this weekend, and tennis courts and batting cages, that's something to bring up as well. And then also we got an email about volunteers still working in the MAC. A very upset citizen sent us that as well.
That would be me, the volunteer.
I wrote her back and explained that it was volunteers who were on the board of the Signal Mountain Grammar School Preservation Fund, and that it was closed to the public. So.
Yeah, I think she had an issue with anyone being in there because it's not essential. She wrote another reply. I just read it while we were sitting here. So I didn't know if that's something we needed to discuss as well, like if we're talking about staying at home and that kind of deal.
Well, we were taking the opportunity, since there are no students, no teachers, no town employee in the building at that point, to take down drop ceilings in 2 hallways. Then we backed out of the way and let the guys come in to hang the sheetrock. And they brought their own masks, their own hand sanitizer. We clean everything before they come and everything after they leave. And so at any given time, there's only 5 people in the whole building. We're very careful to stay apart while we're there. And the worst of that portion is done now. And from then on, it'll just be 1 or 2 people. That's it, period. No public.
Well, and based on the pretty loose interpretation of what shelter in place is by the governor, I think it's okay for, a couple of volunteers to work in the building and take advantage of the fact that it's not open to the public. So.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. I just wanted to bring it up because I didn't know anything until I saw the email.
Okay.
So I think it's important we just get it on the record what's happening so there's no,
Right.
interpretation.
In the governor's order, he did mention that, if I understood you correctly, Harry, that recreational facilities were considered essential. Is that correct interpretation?
That is correct.
But I would also say that we still have the option to choose what happens with our recreational facilities locally.
Agreed.
I don't know if we catch any flack about that, but I certainly agree that we should control what happens there.
I believe, I'm not sure where exactly I saw it as we were scrolling through and Harry was reading it, but it did say something to the effect, provided that all recommended precautions can be observed. And that's why we've tried very hard to keep the open space parks available. And I think with Rainbow Lake, as much as anything, there are many acres, but there are very narrow trails that are being used. So separation with that many people there really became problematic. In addition to the impact it was having on the neighborhoods, the parks and all that are open space continue to be open, with the exception of the playground areas, which I think is also excluded from that.
The playground areas have tape around the equipment, but the open areas are open still.
Right.
All right, I guess just as a wrap up to the parks thing, thanks for that, by the way, Harry, for reading that. That's very helpful. As a wrap up to the parks, just a little bit before the meeting started, I stopped by again to see what traffic was like on a Monday, and there had been about the officer Jennifer, who was down near Signal Point, said there'd been about 10 cars that have come and gone from there that were intending to park there and climb the gate or go around the gate and go in. And the Rainbow Lake Trail appears to be pretty silent today, with an officer sitting in front of that. And we're going to need to discuss that situation as it goes on, or we have the potential added expense of having extra officers out there and just hoping that we get funding for that, because that's not budgeted. It's not specifically budgeted, that overtime. And then there's also we've got cones all the way down Ohio, and the whole Rainbow Lake parking lot situation is something that probably needs to bubble to the top in upcoming council sessions, so we figure out what's going to happen with that.
May I, Dan?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm getting messages from citizens, and I know we won't be able to answer everything, but I think there's some citizens that are wanting to know, and I know we know why, but the caution tape around some of the parks, if you want to just say something real quick on why we chose to do that. Ball fields all have yellow tape at the entrances, but tennis courts are wide open for public use. Please explain why some facilities are open and others are not.
Boyd, you want to chime in on that?
I'm not aware that the ball fields were closed off other than to organized use. I think we did close the batting cages. But to the extent possible, we have tried to keep the open space open. If something has happened that it's had to been closed off because of congregations of people and that has to have happened recently because I'm not aware of that, but I think that all of the parks, especially the open areas, to my knowledge, are still open. Playgrounds, batting cages, places where we saw specific issues with people congregating in a small area have been closed.
Amy, I think what you said just a moment ago was that the batting cage appeared to be open, and that's what the person was asking you?
I think I don't know if they're open or closed, but I think the assumption is that they're closed, and I think people are wanting to know why batting cages are closed. And then another question I got was, why are volunteers allowed to volunteer at the MAC but not at the library?
Well, there could be someone at the library, and I've seen a manager's car. I've seen some folks at the library, but they're not open. And it would be very similar to minimum services at other places.
I think if somebody's on the board of directors of either of those organizations and they're doing volunteer work there, that's different than just a nice person wanting to do volunteer work that doesn't normally do volunteer work there. I think that would be up to the person running the facility.
And there are staff members at the library, just as with town hall. Differs from day to day, but there is town staff there working on a lot of things that we all have that it's hard to get through during normal business. This creates an opportunity to work on those things. They separate, they alternate when folks are there, just like we are. So there's staff there where there's no one at the MAC in terms of town staff.
Do you think that answers the questions you've been asked, Amy?
I don't know, they're typing. And I don't know that we can, I mean, I want to be as transparent and answer as many questions as we can, but I know that we've got an agenda too, so.
Well, but normally during a council meeting, if someone was asking questions, they would say their name and their address, and Carol would put that into record. So I think that's probably appropriate now.
Okay.
Do you agree, Harry? I think you're muted.
Yes, I do.
Okay, Paul Snyder, you'll need to give me your address. And he was the one asking the questions about the batting cages.
We should probably, this would be a good segue into the conversation about how we're going to work this in so that we can have citizen participation in our meetings. Boyd, I don't know if you knew, Sam and I discussed, he could have a phone, and very similar to the way it works at a Hamilton County School Board meeting, I believe they have a 30-minute prior to the meeting, you have to sign in and say that you want to say something. And there might even be a spot there. Harry, you could find out maybe if this is okay for us to do it that way. They don't have to write out everything they want to say, but just who they are and what their topic is. And then you get called to speak then. So we could take phone calls and still have the normal, just the normal system where Sam could put someone on and we could take citizens' opportunity to comment. Does that sound reasonable to you guys? We could deal with text like Amy was doing just now, and I thought about that too, but then we're getting hit from multiple directions. This other way is a bit more organized. Harry, I guess first off, does that sound like it would be legal?
Yes, it does. I think East Ridge had a town council electronically last week, and they asked people to submit topics or questions within a specific period of time, like an hour before the meeting, maybe. And it seemed to go fairly well.
Okay, just to clarify, the baseball fields are not closed, right?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, I didn't think so either, because there was something about, yellow tape on the entrances, but I know on Timberlinks, I saw a little bit of tape just in that one little area, but I wasn't under the impression it was closed, so I just want to clarify for anybody watching, they're not closed.
Now, well, as far as being closed to all use, they are not to my knowledge, but with the rain that we have had, they may have been closed off
For real.
to keep people off of them until they dry out.
That makes more sense. Okay, carry on.
We had a situation the prior weekend where actually from another county, a ball team came up to practice on one of our fields. Even.
We don't have any space to share.
I know.
Holy cow, that's actually funny.
So yeah, so the overall message is everybody, we're all trying to deal with something we've never dealt with before, and we're trying to eliminate community spread, which kills people. And it is going to get more, it's going to get worse where we live. It only works as well as we work to make it work. So there are going to be things that don't seem fair, perhaps. And this isn't about fairness. It's about what you can and can't do and trying to make it work as best we can. And everybody's trying to figure it out, and we're all open to suggestions as to better ways to do it, which I think is evident by the fact that Loretta and Boyd have worked on a way to figure out how to get the transfer station open, at least temporarily. And I'm wondering, in light of what Harry read from the governor a few minutes ago, does that change anything about that, Boyd?
That was the first thing that popped into my head, if we need to rethink that. But once he read through all of the essential or critical activities, I don't know that it does. It's basically a standard government sanitary service that provides an opportunity to remove, whether it's literally garbage or other trash, for lack of a better term, from your property. And I don't know. It seems like it would, with a lot of the other things that were listed, it would certainly seem to be a critical function within those parameters.
How about if you schedule it the way you're doing the transfer station?
I'm sorry?
How about if you schedule recycle the same way you're doing the transfer station?
It's possible. It would be a lot more difficult to manage, I think, because of the parking lot. Basically, we can get folks as they enter the transfer station and control it. It would just be a little more difficult. So we have thought about that, but hopefully we have a better scenario if we can get West Rock to cooperate. If not, then we'll look at something along those lines.
I wasn't going to tell the story, but I think it relates to what's happening. Had a license that I had that was expired, a tag, and had no choice because I had to get a new tag for a vehicle to go to the license bureau today. And I debated whether I wanted to go. I didn't, but I it's a vehicle we drive, and I was afraid I'd get a ticket. And if you're a council member in a small town and you get a ticket, you got to get a ticket. You get pulled over, So I decided to go ahead and do it. And as I pulled up, I'm just relating this to give you an idea of how the county is dealing with necessary services. They're keeping that open. I pulled up, there were way more people there than I was comfortable with. I haven't been around any crowds. And I got out of the car and assessed the situation, and I wanted to see, is there a way to stay safe here? So I walked to the building. There was someone there who asked my phone number, and so they would page me when it was my turn to go wait in the car. So that's the way, and it's the health department stepping in front of a municipal service. So it's the health department working with the license bureau. So waited in the car, took a while. When I came back and went to the front of the building, they then take your temperature and not touching you. And then you go into the the foyer, basically, the outer area of the place. There were only 6 people allowed in there, and they kept them all well more than 6 feet apart. And someone stood at the door where you went in to actually do your tag business, and only let the people in one at a time and sent you to the stations. And even then, they had a little X where everyone stood. There were masks and gloves and the whole deal everywhere. It shook me just a bit, because it was the first time I'd stepped into that situation where you're seeing people coming from everywhere, and you realize, they're taking it seriously. And while here in our little hamlet, it may seem like, it won't affect us, but it will. And there probably are people living in our town right now who are positive for this virus, and we just don't know it. So again, just asking everybody to understand why we're taking this so seriously. And it may not seem fair as we move forward on what's happening, but we're doing our best in an odd situation. So moving on to the next thing, discussion review of continuity of services for plan for critical services, which is, I guess, what we've been doing, right?
Well, that is pretty much the case. I just wanted the opportunity to discuss these things and review what we went over in prior meetings and make sure that council was comfortable with continuing in that vein, both for essential and non-essential services. So put it as agenda item, so we make sure we touched on it and really kind of have gone through that even ahead of getting to it at the agenda.
Anybody have any other thoughts or suggestions maybe for a way to get recycle going again? Or should we?
I don't think it's essential. If we're really gonna do it, then I don't think we're asking, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that with the recycle center, but the truth is, it's not essential.
It isn't. I mean, the whole point of us closing it in the first place was to prevent community spread. So I don't know why we're talking about opening it again.
It's just because people are upset, but I think, Dan, I agree with you. People are not going to like the decisions we've got to make, but this is happening all over. And so I'm okay with people being upset with us for 4 weeks for not being able to recycle.
And to me, I mean, this is just my personal take on this shelter, whatever. It's not called a shelter in place. It's a stay at home recommendation. But I mean, it doesn't have any teeth. There's nothing really to it. It's a strong recommendation to stay home, but virtually I could make a case for any business to be open. It's not really giving enough guidance. So it's, they're making a recommendation, but doesn't have any teeth. So I think it's okay for us to say our recycle center is closed. That is a place where the community convenes, where you really could have a problem with community spread. It was a good idea to close it, and it's still a good idea to keep it closed. And I'm a big recycler. I'm not happy about not being able to take my recycling, but this is an unprecedented, once in a lifetime situation. We got to do it.
And to clarify, we're looking for ways to provide access to recycling, not necessarily opening the recycle center. So that, because I feel the same, that close proximity and just, if you're there, you just know, what it's like, and that's not going to work. So we're looking to see if there's something else that might work. And to me, the center itself is not a likely candidate, no matter how you try to structure it.
And I think too, I said this at the last meeting and I'll say it again. I think, and Susanna touched on it, this is an unprecedented event and we're all kind of learning as we go. And I think a little bit of grace goes a long way for everyone. For right now, we're not going to open recycling. If we come up with a better plan in 2 weeks from now, maybe we'll look at that, just like Boyd came up with a better plan for the transfer station. But I think that as a community, we have to come together and, you know what, these are not easy decisions, but they have to be made because because just like Rainbow Lake, we tried to give everyone an opportunity to practice social distancing and police themselves, and it was packed. So you got to make decisions. So that's what I would ask to our community and citizens watching is allow a little grace for council members, for town employees, for everybody that's really trying to navigate something we've never navigated before. So I think that goes a long way.
I don't want to put the recycle employee at risk at all. And having worked there and having had, having used that recycle center since the first day it was open and before that, there are so many things that would have to be monitored on an ongoing basis. You know, everyone uses the little carts. Somebody comes in and touches the side of one of the bins in there. The next person comes up and touches it or coughs on it or whatever. It's going to be a problem.
Right, somebody's gonna put glass in the cardboard,
And somebody
mixed paper bin, and then they have to go in and get it out, and.
Exactly. And people do stop and talk. I've watched them outside in front of my street, and they do it at the recycle center. And that's one of the ways it was built, was to be a community hub where people got together and supported one another and supported the recycling effort. But we just need everyone to be understanding. Like you said, these are difficult times. We will get through this, and we'll find a new normal out there somewhere. But for right now, put it in a bag and put it in your garage. It'll still be there.
All right, thanks everybody for that. And any other comments on that? It's a little difficult for us if we have other business items and things to bring to these kinds of discussions. So never hesitate to, if we're doing this electronic thing, if you have something that didn't fit with what we were doing and you want to speak. So if that's okay, we have on our agenda guidance to residents, businesses, and visitors, and I think we've covered that. We just got the new guidance from the governor. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Boyd?
Well, just really put that there as a lead-in to the resolution, so that it provided an opportunity to discuss what guidance and recommendations that pledge entails, so that it really was an opportunity to discuss it ahead of actually introducing the resolution.
Okay. Susanna, you motioned.
I would just say, I'm sure most people that are watching this are practicing really responsible social distancing. I've seen lots and lots of carloads of teenagers in particular, just people driving all over the mountain. And I would just, please recommend strongly that as parents, we try to control that. That is not social distancing. Those kids are bringing those whatever germs they're exposed to home with them, and that's how community spread happens. And we'll be really lucky if we can keep it off of this mountain. I think it's pretty unlikely, but it's hard. I think it's hard for us as a council to try to control the movements of our citizenry, but we do have recommendations in place, and I would just kindly ask that everybody please respect those and respect the health of every person on this mountain.
I think there's a bit of a misconception about what the term social distancing means. It doesn't mean 6 feet. It means don't do things socially. If you are forced into the situation where you have necessary business, essential business, that's where the 6 feet comes in. But social distancing means distance yourself.
And your family.
Right.
Just because you're staying at home, if you're an adult, if you have a teenager who is a driver, don't let them go pick their friends up and drive places. That is not safe.
Harry, and this is a Harry and Boyd question. I've had asked from a couple of directions because people drive by and they see folks playing golf in the country club, and I've explained that that's not a decision that the town makes. That's a private club, and it's a decision they make. Did you hear anything within what you read a moment ago that would affect the country club? Because it's a big social gathering place, and I know I'm going to get slammed for bringing this up, but it needs to be brought up.
I didn't see anything that would that I think will change the country club's position. They, as I understand it, they are allowing people to play as long as they socially distance themselves, and they're not allowed to touch, rakes and flag sticks, and they can't ride in carts together. I hadn't thought about it, but I don't think anything that I read would change that.
Boyd, you look like you had a thought a moment ago.
No, I was looking at these orders again to see if anything jumped out, but nothing specifically.
That recreational part of the mandate probably is directed to places like golf courses, that they're still open, right? Like private clubs.
In the order number 21, it says entertainment and recreational gathering venues shall not be open to members or the public. Such venues include, but are not limited to, nightclubs, bowling alleys, arcades, concert venues, theaters, auditoriums, performing arts centers, or similar facilities, racetracks, indoor children's play areas, adult entertainment venues, amusement parks, or roller or ice skating rinks. Obviously, it doesn't specifically mention those, but those are all things that are more large gathering or indoor type venues.
It sounds like they're covered. It sounds like they can still do business as usual there. Wow.
Well, I don't know if as usual would be.
As usual, under the guidance to separate ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. All right. If anybody have anything else you want to add on that, I'm going to move on to the resolution now. And if you'll bear with me, I'd like to read this resolution because I think it's somewhat poignant, and it helps put in perspective why and what it is we're doing. This is the Regional Mayor's Council COVID-19 Response Pledge. And before I read through this, I'll say that the effort is to get the regional mayors to all encourage their cities to participate in stopping the spread of COVID-19 across our area. And it's only as successful as areas participate in it. Because as we saw, the reason we had so many people visiting our parks, besides the fact that they're awesome, is because their parks were closed. So Signal Mountain, they came here. And when we closed our hiking areas, they're moving somewhere else. And so we've all got to participate. So anyway, whereas the novel coronavirus 2019 COVID-19 is a communicable respiratory disease that can lead to serious illness or death, particularly in the case of elderly adults and persons with serious chronic medical conditions. And whereas on January 21st, 2020, following guidance of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Tennessee Department of Health designated COVID-19 as a reportable disease in Tennessee. And whereas on March 12th, 2020, the governor for the state of Tennessee issued an executive order to facilitate the treatment and containment of COVID-19. And whereas on March 13th, Mayor Andy Burke declared a state of emergency for the city of Chattanooga, pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated 389101 and 52101, and City of Chattanooga 984 and 2587 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas on March 19th, 2020, the governor for the state of Tennessee issued executive number 15, declared that a state of emergency and major disaster exists to facilitate the response to COVID-19, and issued executive order 16 on March 19th and 17 on March 22nd, 2020, limiting social gatherings, dine-in service, and gym use, and exposure at nursing and retirement homes, providing flexibility for restaurants regarding the sale of alcohol. Whereas on March 23rd, 2020, Mayor Jim Coppinger declared a state of emergency in Hamilton County in response to COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas as of March 27, 2020, Hamilton County Health Department has reported 26 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Hamilton County, and that community transmission may be occurring. And whereas March 27, 2020, there were at least 784 positive COVID-19 test results reported in the state of Tennessee. Whereas this is a highly infectious disease with an unknown mortality rate, but which has the potential to seriously harm our families, our communities, and our regional economy if it is not brought under control. And whereas COVID-19 respects no boundaries, political affiliations, or demographics with regard to who it hurts, and neither do its destructive economic or public health outcomes. And whereas the American people should be prepared to confront this challenge over the next several months with a unified and determined spirit of cooperation, collective sacrifice, and concern for each other's welfare and safety. Now, therefore, I, Dan Landrum, Mayor of the town of Sigma Mountain, in recognition of the importance of the ongoing need to contain and defeat novel coronavirus in my community and in our region, do pledge to take the following action steps. 1, request that all local employers follow our lead in allowing as many employees as possible to work remotely and to be as generous as reasonably possible with paid leave policies. 2, continue to ask for the public's help in observing all common sense sanitation and social distancing practices, including frequent hand washing, disinfecting of hard surfaces, and refraining from physical contact. 3, discourage public gatherings of any size and social interactions of any size for any reason other than the most essential activities of procuring groceries, receiving medical attention, or caring for a family member or loved one. This includes refraining from patronizing businesses that are not absolutely essential to maintaining public health and welfare. 4, limit travel within and between our communities to only the most essential tasks. 5, commit to following these guidelines for as long as infectious disease and public health experts deem necessary, as so to keep our citizens safe and limit the long-term damage to our communities and our economy, and prevent the likelihood of another dangerous rise in infections later this year. And it'll be signed assuming we pass it. So do your motion.
If I might, you really need to read the heading of the actual resolution that adopts this before you go for votes.
Can you read the heading for that for me, Carol?
A resolution adopting the Regional Mayor's Council COVID-19 response pledge for the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee.
Motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
Second.
So Susanna motion and Cheryl seconded, Carol.
Got it, thank you.
All right, discussion.
Before we get into, just a reminder that the vote will need to be a roll call vote.
Thank you. Any discussion? If it was being written today, it would include the governor's, the stuff from today. All right, Carol, would you call a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak,
Aye.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Aye.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
You're muted.
Aye.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Aye.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Aye. Carries 5-0. Anybody have any other business that you want to bring to the table now? I was looking away. Did anybody raise your hand? I have a couple of things I want to bring up just to kind of wrap up. Thoughts on signage for closure of our parks or that yellow tape? Is that going to work? Do you think there's any other way we ought to do it? Go ahead, Susanna.
I did have a thought about maybe some signage at our parks. I mean, I know we have police officers there, but do we need, some signage at some of these, like at the recycle center, just saying, we're temporarily closed because of COVID? Or do we need it at, should we hang signage on things that are closed? Or are they just closed?
I think there is signage at Recycle. Beyond that, once we get through this initial period, we can try signage at Rainbow Lake and Signal Point and see if that does the trick. If not, we'll have to revisit that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all. I was just saying that's a good thought.
Yeah.
I wondered if it would do us some good to have a sign at the bottom of the mountain, in particular on the weekends. If it might even be worth renting something. It's not our property. We'd have to get permission from Mayor Burke's office, I guess. But if we put it there where all the campaign signs go up, right at the foot of the mountain, that let people know that Signal Point Park is closed and that Rainbow Lake Trail is closed, that might make the job easier for our police officers. Is that something we can consider?
We can check into that and let you know. I just got a text from Chief Williams, said he has already ordered 2 signs that say parks are closed for Rainbow Lake and Signal Point.
For where?
For Rainbow Lake and Signal Point.
I mean, to put them there. Yeah.
Does that mean that Green Gorge Park is closed as well, or is that still, can people still use that?
I think that's a secret. And local folks have been acting on it, and that's probably fine. I mean, that's
Yeah.
my opinion. But
There's
the
not
idea
really
is
anywhere to
not-
park around there to access it. It's really one of those places you pretty much access on foot, so.
Right. And I think that's the situation. If the situation was different with Rainbow Lake, it may still be open. If the scenario plays out that it did at Rainbow Lake and Green Gorge, we'll end up having to do the same thing. But as long as we can provide the space and the manner in which it's used is safe for the community, we'll try to continue to do that.
Yeah.
One of the recommendations that I saw was that people walk to anything that's near you if you want to walk and stay, not in groups, but don't drive to some other place to go walk. That solves the problem for the most part. We're not under a stay inside and don't be outside order. We're under a don't congregate order. And all the action down there was just to stop the congregation. And traffic as well. There was a significant traffic problem on Saturday. All right. Anybody have any other business? We don't have on the agenda our meeting schedule. Do we feel our first scheduled meeting really is still about 2 weeks out? It is 2 weeks from today, isn't it?
I think so.
Do you feel comfortable just keeping, unless something comes up that we need to do, sticking to the regular schedule, just having an online meeting at 6 p.m.?
Fine with me.
Cheryl, you said something, but it didn't come through.
Should that works.
Bill?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, then. If there's no other business, we will, let's take a look at what we started with. Were there, just to be sure, ending the meeting, are there any next steps that we've given staff for now? Just look into signs, that's the most recent thing. Boyd still has the ability, he's, basic, because we have not rescinded anything as far as any emergency purchases that need to take place. Is that correct, everybody? Do we want to leave that in place for now?
Yes.
Everybody else okay with that?
Yep.
So I guess that's it. We'll see you in a couple weeks. We are adjourned.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Boyd.